Good afternoon and welcome to the Center for Mission YouTube page, the page where you can learn about all things Catholic social teaching and justice related for the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. My name is Adam Fitzpatrick and I am your beloved host. Well, hopefully beloved, and you don't want to throw tomatoes at me. If you want to throw tomatoes at me, send me an email. Don't throw tomatoes at me. I am here today with Bridget Robertson, a graduating senior at the University of Minnesota, here to discuss her research on Laudato Si in the U.S. Catholic Church. And we're going to do a little mini interview today, like about 15, 20 minutes to get a few basic questions to get her research just on the airwaves here. And then we will be planning a larger presentation of her research sometime this summer, along with a few other organizations potentially. So be on the lookout for that. Bridget, first all, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Like Adam said, my name is Bridget. I'm a senior at the University of Minnesota. I'm studying environmental science, policy, and management with minors in corporate environmental management, and sustainability studies. So I'm really interested in how do we affect change in the climate crisis at a systemic level, but also how does that affect communities? So over the past 4 years, I've really enjoyed getting involved in various clubs and research activities, and that's led to the culmination of this research project. In my free time, I love camping and hiking and exercising, things like that. And I'm looking forward to moving to Atlanta soon after graduation to start my professional life.
Wonderful. So you wrote a thesis about Laudato Si in the U.S. Catholic Church. Can you give us what the thesis was and then a little bit about your research methodology and how you came about finding the information?
Yes, definitely. So I was, I'll start at the inception of where I got this idea for the research. I was in adoration and I was looking at the tabernacle and I was wondering, we're keeping, the body of Christ in this gold, amazing box. I'm wondering where the gold comes from, if this is coming at the hands of people that are being mistreated or mistreating the environment, especially after reading Laudato Si, which encompassed a lot of what I'd learned during my tenure at university. So that led me to think about sustainability on a wider level in the Catholic Church. We have such a broad reach in the United States, and we use so many precious minerals for our chalices, for all of these holy items that it seems like it would really go along with Catholic social teaching to have those be ethically sourced. So I was curious at what the United States is doing in this realm, and in the Catholic Church specifically. So the research question was, have Catholic purchasing habits in the United States changed before and after the publication of Laudato Si? Because that was really the big shock that we were looking at, where people started to wake up to the environmental crises that are happening and how that has implications on humanitarian things as well. So that was the big question that we were looking at. I was working under the supervision of my entrepreneurship professor. Her name is Joalu, and she works in corporate social responsibility research. And so she was helping me guide this process. And so we took a few approaches. We had to pivot a few times due to data availability issues. And we were originally going to look at manufacturing to see where they were getting the gold from. But turns out that since a lot of church suppliers are private companies, they don't owe that information to anyone besides their shareholders. So they were not willing to provide that information to a student researcher. So we pivoted to talk to the Archdiocese level. And so we also decided that qualitative would be better for this, just to understand the breadth a little bit more, because this is so complex that we could go the quantitative route, but it would be better to talk with people, hear their stories. So I called Archdiocese and said, hey, I'm doing this research, asking these questions about sustainability. Who would be the best person to talk with? Because each diocese is structured so differently that it ended up being a different title in almost every diocese that I talked with. So had some awesome conversations, some really great interviews with some fabulous people at Archdiocese level, just talking about how does your diocese make decisions? How are there contracts? How are purchasing, is sustainability included in purchasing decisions? Things of that nature. And then analyzed that and looked at what were common themes, things like that.
That's super fascinating. So what did you find when you were, because you're in a real technical field if you're looking at sustainability contracts and proxy arrangements and contract review processes of dioceses. So what did you find in your research?
Yeah, great question, Ellen. So the resounding theme was that there is an awareness, and people feel compelled to work on Laudato Si, but due to the disjointed, fragmented purchasing scales, and sometimes the archdiocese, they can make recommendations to the parishes, but parishes aren't always mandated to take those recommendations. And also we're in a spot, it seems like, that most contracts don't include sustainability in their requirements for purchasing. So we found that there's an awareness and people feel convicted, but there's a lack of prioritization on this. So funds are just not being allocated to any form of sustainability in most parishes. If anything, it's the low-hanging fruit, like LED lighting, or they'll do audits and realize a lot of air is escaping, so they'll do little things to mitigate that on a cost-saving basis. So we found that there's a lot of barriers, especially prioritization, cost-wise, risk analysis, things like that are barring the church from really adopting these practices at a larger scale. But it's difficult to see that people really want this. It's just, there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get it.
And how do you find, so we got the problem, and we've talked a little bit about some of the particulars that might be causing the problem. Do you have any ideas in terms of solutions that dioceses could implement, or if not diocesan wide, what could parishes do to look at the purchasing agreements that they make throughout the parish? As like, because if we're in the idea of respecting subsidiarity, the idea that if you can make a local decision at the local level, you make that decision, and if you need help, it goes up to the higher branches. So how would you suggest people look at purchasing contracts, even if sustainability is not explicitly mentioned in a contract?
Yeah, I think this is the most important question, because this is why I love research, is that hopefully it'll change things in the future. So what I realized was, if more parishes have people like you in these positions of being able to think about either social justice, environmental justice, sustainability managing, that would be extremely helpful, because a lot of parishes have green teams or care for creation teams doing this work, so that, even if it was part-time, it would make a massive difference if archdiocese had widespread, care for creation staff working to implement these things and create audits, or a systemic way for people to see this is how caring for creation can also help alleviate some cost issues. I also think that if the procurement or contract negotiators at the archdiocese level really push for including sustainability on their contracts, that will trickle down to the parish level, because they're using those contracts most of the time, it seems like. And so if that's a push, it seems like there are a few people in those positions that have a real heart for sustainability, and they're really active in that space. And so if they're able to intertwine that in the contracts, then the parishes are just going to naturally adopt that and hopefully see the benefits and the dividends coming after that. So I think, one, hiring a care for creation expert, sustainability manager, however you want to name it, and adopting the things that the currently existing volunteer-led care for creation teams are doing would help immensely, because a lot of parishes just don't have the bandwidth and resources to dedicate to that right now, which is completely understandable. We're navigating a pandemic, so everyone's got a lot on their plate. And then incorporating that into contracts, I think, would be a really seamless way to get that done. And just, realizing the power of, if you can have an archdiocese that has a little bit more connection between what the recommendation is in the parishes and the schools, that's a lot of impact. You could have a lot of greenhouse gas emissions could go down depending on how you approach things. I do think your point about each parish being able to decide for themselves is really important, because for some parishes it makes more sense to switch to LEDs. In some areas it makes more sense to change insulation or do recycling or composting, things like that. So I really like the idea of having autonomy at the parish level, but having some semblance of cohesion between all of the moving parts within the diocese, just to really reinforce, like, we are a church that cares about this doctrine from the Pope and this mandate to care for the environment.
How are you going to take this research as you move forward in your own career? You said you're starting a new job in a few weeks. So how is this research going to help propel you in your career as you're thinking about issues of environmental justice, corporate social responsibility, and just the care for the earth?
Definitely. Yeah, this is something that I'm clearly passionate about. And I think this has been a great start to the research, but I think a lot more can be uncovered, a lot more can be discovered in order to help parishes help the environment. And I think with my future career, I'll be, even though I won't be necessarily working in this specific field, I think that these are lessons that I can apply to corporate social responsibility in my workplace, in shaping what does that look like, how do we engage well in corporate social responsibility. And then in my free time, I'd love to pursue this research further and work with those care for creation teams. Hopefully in Atlanta, I can start contributing to the Laudato Si action plans and implementing those as a way to honestly bring this research to fruition, see how we can, test it out a little bit. And I'm coming from the theory side right now, so I'd love to see the applied knowledge. But this is a lifelong process, and I'm foreseeing it as something that I can continually strive for, both in my professional career, but then also in my faith journey and walk with whatever parishes I end up being a parishioner at.
Great. Well, that's all the time we've got for Bridget today. So we wanted to thank you. Again, this was our mini interview with Bridget Robertson. We'll be doing some further work with her later this summer as her research comes to completion, and then we can do a more full exposition of her research here on YouTube. Again, my name is Adam Fitzpatrick. I am the Social Mission Outreach Coordinator for the Center for Mission, serving the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. And we had Bridget Robertson on today. Thank you for being on with us, and we will see you next time.